Welcome back to A Simple Word, where we speak about the gospel for the upcoming Sunday and help you to prepare to listen so that the grace of God may come through this word. And we hear a very challenging word this Sunday. We hear about Jesus saying, love your enemies. And because it's so challenging, it's important to look at it closely. Because when Jesus says, love your enemies, this is not a law. We think of a law as something that we have to do, and often we think about laws as asking us to do things with which we're uncomfortable. But this is not really a law, but an invitation. Jesus begins in the Gospel of Luke by saying to his disciples, "To you who hear, I say." Often Jesus will say, "He who has ears should listen." Here he says, "To you who hear, I say." In other words, he is speaking something that comes from God. This is a word of God, and it's different from other words, so we need to listen. So Jesus says, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. And he's even more specific. If a person strikes you on one cheek, then turn the other cheek. Whoever takes your cloak, give that to them. From the one who takes what is yours, do not demand it back. Jesus was speaking at a time when people were being persecuted by others. The Romans were allowed to take things from them or force people to walk when they didn't want to walk. It was a very challenging time. And he says to these people who were persecuted, love your enemies. Why does he do this? Again, it's an invitation. You'll hear in the first letter to the Corinthians, Paul saying, we're different. We're not like the rest of people in the sense that we are born the image of the Heavenly One. We're born the image of God. Just as all of us share in an earthly image or human image, we also bear the image of Christ. And the most perfect image of Christ is him on the cross, in which he was loving his enemies. This is an invitation. We can have the Spirit of Christ. We can do the same thing. Jesus says, love your enemies, do good to them, lend and expect nothing back, and you will be children of the Most High. So this word is not a law telling us we need to be this way, but it's an invitation to become children of God, to take on the Spirit of Jesus Christ. He says, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. This is something that we can do. Again, the other readings help us. In the responsorial psalm, we'll be singing, the Lord is kind and merciful. And it's not only speaking about God, it's speaking about us. And that we're also called to be kind and merciful. Again, not as a law, but because Christ dwells in us. The first reading is from the first book of Samuel, and it speaks about Saul. He was chasing after David. He wanted to kill David. He brings all these men to search for David. And one night they sneak into his camp, and they find Saul lying asleep, and his sword is stuck into the ground next to him, or his spear is stuck into the ground next to him. And they say, oh, we should kill him. It's right here. We have the spear. We can kill him. And David says, no, we can't harm him. Who can lay hands on the Lord's anointed and remain unpunished? When you listen to Jesus saying in the gospel, love your enemies, it's important to recognize that he's saying everyone is loved by God. Everyone is dear to God, anointed. Many are at least are anointed through baptism, but all men and women are loved by God. And this is why we too are called to love them. We can't harm them. Why do we love our enemies? Not because it's a law, but because we have the nature of Jesus Christ. So I invite you, when you hear this word this Sunday, as you listen to this word, love your enemies, don't consider it as a law, but as an invitation. You're also going to hear a word about stop judging and you will not be judged. And this is because God judges with mercy. He'll say, stop condemning and you will not be condemned. Remember, Jesus said in the face of this woman who had sinned, and he said, well, whoever hasn't sinned, they can cast the first stone. He says, I don't condemn you either. We're called to take on the nature of Jesus, who can forgive, who doesn't condemn. When we condemn, we're saying about a person, not even God can save them. Wouldn't it be better to hear this word and recognize God can save anyone? God can bring justice, God can bring peace in places where we think it's impossible. So this Sunday, you're going to hear an invitation. Love your enemies. This is something you can do. Listen for that invitation. So if you like this presentation, please click like, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on The Simple Word.